Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Raising Those Spirits podcast. I'm Steve,
And I'm Sam.
and we've got a big one.
Oh yeah, we have uh probably one of my things I've looked forward to the most.
I can't believe it took us
Talking
this
about,
long.
and I like to think that we were saving it for the 1 year anniversary
Yeah,
um of the show because I feel like really the heart and soul of this show. If this is your first time listening to the show, we talk about family friendly spooky stuff that you can enjoy with your kids or other um spooky people in your life. This is probably one of the most influential um children's spooky stories collections in my life. Really one of the big ones.
this was huge in the 90s. We're, in case you didn't read the title, doing scary stories to read in the dark.
To tell in the dark.
To tell in the dark, sorry. And
Uh-huh. Specifically the book, not the film.
yes,
Until
next
next
week,
time. Next week we'll talk about the movie. Today we're talking about the book.
because honestly, I was reading this and I was like, how are they going to make this into a movie? So I'm even more amped up for the movie now.
Yeah, the movie came out a couple of years ago. So, we're parents. We're not always super up on all the latest trends.
But theoretically, so is everyone listening. So,
That's true. So, yeah, if you're like us and you have toddlers, or you have a toddler, my kid is just like a straight up kid now. I think I would still called her a toddler when we started this show. She's just a kid. You're probably just getting around to some things that came out in the last couple of years.
absolutely. So, that's what we're doing later. But what's going on in the world right now?
All right, so we're going to introduce a new segment this week where we're going to talk about spooky celebrations and morbid celebrations from around the world. Because there
There's a
are
ton of them.
there's so many of them. We did a little bit of research. I think we did about 2 hours worth of research, and we came up with a huge list of different spooky celebrations.
In just 2 hours, we have, and again, this was just pulling, what we found in 2 hours. There's many, many more. We have over a year of content.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna try and do the top of each episode, talk about a different spooky celebration from around the world. This year, for May 3rd, if you're listening on the day that this episode is released, May 3rd, today is Prov Adi. Maybe saying it wrong. I almost guarantee that I'm saying it wrong, but I'm going to say Provadi, a Ukrainian tradition. We're thinking, impossible not to be thinking about Ukraine right now. So let me tell you a little bit about that. And before I even start, I want to plug joincake.com, where I found a lot of this information, which is an end of life planning webpage. They had an article from a few years ago by a Sarah Kessler, a writer from that page, about Provati and the related traditions from Eastern Europe and the Slavic countries. Pravati is the Ukrainian tradition of celebrating the dead. It's called the Day of Rejoicing. In Russia, it's known as Adonista. It is also celebrated in Belarus. It is an Orthodox holiday related to Easter. So it happens always, it's right around Easter. It is when to celebrate the dead, people go to their families' graves and they have a big feast. So they're bringing food, they're bringing colored eggs because again it's tied into to Easter. They're bringing drinks. A big one is mead, especially in Belarus. It sounds like what they will do is pour honey and mead out onto the graves of their lost loved ones. And what you end up having is basically a big Easter celebration in cemeteries in the graveyards of these Eastern European countries. It's also celebrated in Orthodox communities around the world. It is likely derived from a pagan ritual called Trizna. I don't know how to pronounce that either. Trizna. Trizna. I think it's the closest I can come to. Um, which was a Slavic tradition of same kind of celebrations where they'd have games and contests and music and dancing and eating all to celebrate their lost loved ones. The celebration coincides with the end of Lent. Again, it is also the first day in Orthodox religions after Lent that you can get married. So it's actually a big day to get married. And young couples will go to the graves of their dead relatives to ask them for their blessing, which I think is really nice. They eat a lot of different foods, including cookies and a dish called oliva, which is like a wheat dish. It seems almost like a porridge. I found some different recipes online. It's like a sweet dish, and no,
That's
how
really
on this?
cool.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry, I was just like flipping through my notes.
No,
Uh,
it's
it's
I'm loving this.
no, it seems like a pretty incredible celebration. It is a day of joy and hope, especially because it is tied in. Again, it's tied into Easter, so it's a lot of it's a celebration of renewal and resurrection. So basically, it's the hope of life after life going on. Yes, today is Provati. For anybody who wants to celebrate.
Nice. So yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds, sometimes you're like, "Oh, that's my kind of spooky holiday," and sometimes you're like, "Oh no, thank you." And this is a my type of spooky holiday,
Yeah, it's more religious based. It's more religion based.
which is
So
typically not my type of holiday.
no, but I think it would be
I like the
fun
food
to
and the
go
drink
visit.
and the hanging out in graveyards.
I think that's the thing that's the most interesting about it, especially since death and mortality is often met with such fear. The fact that everybody is this is a day that everybody can go and celebrate um our lost loved ones in a way that isn't sad. There's still a lot of prayer involved. According to the website I was reading up on it, there isn't any specific prayers for the day. It's more just you're praying to connect with your lost family members. I thought an interesting part of the tradition, uh, giving out small gifts and presents is a part of it, but is specifically to your God-given family, and that translates to your in-laws. So it's a good day to go give your in-laws a little gift. Let them know you're thinking of them. Which we all love to do.
Yeah,
I think my in-laws deserve a gift because they are watching my daughter today.
I have a
Took her
ton
overnight.
of firewood for my in-laws, so I feel like
Is that what
that's.
your in-laws like?
Yes, they do. They love having fires all summer, and
Oh, that's nice.
I just had a lot of trees taken down, so I'm donating a summer's worth of wood to them.
It's awesome.
Yeah, there we go. Done. Done for this year's
Good.
holiday.
No, give it to them on May 3rd, and it's going to be your Pravati gift.
Perfect.
Lovely. That's so nice. Oh,
And if they're like, "What is this?" I'll be like, "Haven't you been paying attention to what's been going on in the Ukraine? Not nearly close enough."
no.
Cool.
I like that you're using colored eggs again, because if you have any left over. Although, after a couple of weeks, I don't think you want to hold on to those hard-boiled eggs if you have them left over from Easter.
I do
Make
have
new
them left
ones.
over. How do you know I have them left over?
I'm just saying, if you still have them left over on May 3rd when this episode airs,
Hmm.
probably not good anymore.
I mean,
Like
I only made
2
them
weeks in the
on.
fridge?
I made them. I mean, eggs. Eggs stay in the fridge indefinitely. I don't know after they're hard boiled. Like, not indefinitely, but forever.
They are sealed. Okay, so you know what? I'm not an egg scientist.
How
I've never had
long?
hard-boiled
Seven
eggs stick around in
days.
my house.
They
7 days.
last up to 7 days in the refrigerator.
Oh my god, that means I have to just like a bunch of hard-boiled eggs. because I had a whole carton full of Easter eggs. At I've eaten about half of them. Daughter
Yeah.
painted them, but she doesn't eat hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah, I got a pause thing and dyed them. We had fun. My son did not care.
Really?
I mean, he's been like skipping a lot of naps recently and has just been insane.
Oh, so you're at the end of naps.
I
This is the
hope
worst
not.
period
He's
of time.
only he's only like 2. I shouldn't be at the end of
Yeah,
naps.
you could very well be at the end of
Oh,
naps.
don't tell me that. Don't tell my wife that. She listens to this podcast.
And my daughter stopped taking naps was the end of productivity.
Yeah, no, for real. That's the thing. So I've been in the office. I got a new job
Hey!
and it's work from home except for like the first month I have to be in the office to like do training and stuff.
Makes sense.
And so of course this is the time he's picking to skip naps. But
That's
so
a big win for you. That's a loss for your wife. That
that
is
is a
a win for you.
huge loss for my wife. Yes. So it's not exactly a win for me because my job, Sam, I took a
Mhm.
work from home job, but they convinced me to come in sometimes when they're like swamped, basically, or when there's like an emergency.
Okay,
And
that doesn't seem too strange.
I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Um, do you know what I'm doing, Sam?
Tell. I know what you've done in the past. I assumed it was the same. What are you doing now?
I'm working in a cadaver lab.
You are not.
I am. I spend my days with dead bodies all day. I hung out with a headless dude all day yesterday.
Don't have a reaction to that that would feasibly be able to be aired on this podcast because it involved a lot of F words. What?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so I do AV and like
I
video.
was about to say, like, what does this have to do with like
Well,
video tech?
I work at the, not to give too much information away, a big pharma site where they develop all the joint implants and stuff.
Okay,
So after you create like a fake knee, a fake shoulder, a fake spine bone, you have to test it out on like cadavers before you can put it into people.
makes
And
sense. Yeah, that tracks.
so I'm at that lab and they need to like film these things for training and for study and to broadcast out to surgeons to learn how to do. And so I set up all the AV equipment in the lab and I monitor and send the feed and zoom the cameras in and out and I have to go in and like move cameras and stuff. Like fix their microphones, clean up all the viscera that gets splattered all over my camera lenses and stuff at the end. Yeah,
Holy crow!
I am hanging
Wow,
out. So I actually read this week's book while sitting through a lab.
you are a fictional character now. This is not a job that real people would have. This is the setting of a sitcom, like a morbid sitcom.
Yeah,
Steve's life in the Steve in
it
the lab.
it is so sitcom-y because they were like, at first if you just want to stay up in like the room, if you don't want to go near the lab, a lot of people take like a month to get in there. My first day I was just like in the lab. Like I
Oh,
eat I
I'm
was eating a
speechless.
sandwich while working the other day, just like eating a sandwich and like zooming the camera around. Like I'm a sitcom character now. This is it.
You know, it's like in every TV show, like every police procedural. They go and they meet
The
the
mortician.
mortician, and the mortician's always a little weird and probably eating something because
Yeah.
that's the show. Like, oh, I'm so used to all this stuff. This isn't even weird to me. You're
Yeah.
that guy now.
That is me.
You're the morgue tech.
That is 100% me now. So that's my new
Holy holy
unexpectedly
moly!
spooky job.
You
I'm
knew what it. Did you know this was going to be a big part of it when you applied?
I knew it was going to be a part of it. I was not supposed to be here this often or doing this much. You know what I mean? Like I was supposed
Mhm.
to be kind of like watching the front while people were in the labs, but no, I'm just in the labs.
Wow. With Headless Joe.
Yeah, luckily I got warned about the head my first day, because my first day there wasn't any corpses that I was aware of. I realized I was like leaning against a set of legs at one point, but because that's the other thing, you'll just like walk through a hallway and there's just like legs on a gurney, and you're like, okay, that's the bottom half of a torso. Got it.
This is why I'm getting cremated.
Yeah, but so my first day, we were like setting up how the camera's gonna go, and we got to put it on like a C stand and put it directly down, and we were like, all right, we're gonna have to come up and over the body, and the guy was like, oh, he doesn't have a head, so you're gonna have a lot of clearance there, and I was like, just kind of like, okay, good to know, he won't have a head, like, and honestly. My first like 20 bodies didn't have heads, and yesterday was my first person with a head, and it's worse when they have one. I found out. You can like
Oh,
detach.
sure, because it's more real now.
Yeah, it's like really easy to detach yourself from it when it's like just a torso or like just a random knee or like a left arm. But when it's like, oh, that is a body with a bag over the head, so you can't see who it is. Like that's like some serial killer shit.
Oh, I'm
So I now basically know that when we read a book or something, I probably read it while sitting through one of these.
so upset right now. This is upsetting.
It's very upsetting. I've completely disassociated from it. Like from the second I walked in, I was like, "All right, this
You'd
is
have to.
yeah." I disassociated immediately, and I've been handling it so well, and that's like worrisome. Because like the second it becomes real, I'm like, "Oh no."
To introduce you to another friend of mine who's soon to be a parent, who at one point had a job basically cleaning up in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So this sounds like doing work related to what you're doing now, but more on the front end.
Yeah, a comedian that I like used to do that. He would clean up post surgery,
Ugh.
and he's like, it is a gruesome task.
I
Um,
hope nobody's listening, and I hope nobody's listening to this in the morning on their commute to
Oh
work.
yeah, yeah, cause yeah, I literally like I have to like fully scrub up and get like the gloves and everything, and like they're like, oh, everything you wipe your equipment down with, make sure it doesn't touch your skin, cause it's literally made to like melt anything that goes splattering, so it will melt your hands. And I'm just like, I got a work from home job.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's insane. So you know,
So what are you drinking, Steve?
so I feel like we're kind of telling stories. A big part of scary stories to tell in the dark is that you're supposed to be telling these stories to people, kind of like around a campfire or something.
Hmm.
And it's kind of getting to outdoor fire season. We're into May now. People have like fire pits and stuff going. So I thought, what's good when it's still cold out, but you're sitting around a fire? So I make a mulled wine
Hmm.
that I felt would be good for this. So what I do is the Pennsylvania Ren Fair actually makes like a mulled holiday wine, but they
Hmm.
also make a spiced apple wine, and they're both good on their own. But one of the things that they do at one of their wine stands at the fair is you can get a mulled wine that's made after they combine them and heat them. So I always buy like a few bottles of each, and then I combine them and heat them, and it's like a mulled spiced apple
Hmm.
wine, and it is very good, and it's very easy to make if you can find, and like it's easy to find a spiced apple wine and a pre-mulled wine, and just mix them up, heat them up, mix them together, and it's a really good glass.
Well, that sounds very lovely. I went a very different direction. Rather than celebrating our topic, I decided to celebrate Cinco de Mayo,
Mm-hmm.
uh, my people's
Should have thought of
people's
that.
holiday. And I made myself a margarita, and I will tell you what, it is just margarita mix and tequila mixed together in a glass. It's delicious and one of my very favorite things to drink.
Great.
Yeah, low effort. It was a low effort. I did make some Cuban pork the other day, but that's Cuban. That's not Mexican. But that was a lot of effort. I love doing a good Cuban pork. In the slow cooker took all day.
Nice.
It's very rewarding. And tomorrow I'll have the leftovers with probably another glass of margarita.
So, on a unrelated side note, I've been making a lot of Indian recently. Um, or like over COVID, I've been making a lot of Indian. And I
Hmm.
thought I was getting pretty good at it. Like I make some tasty Indian, but then a new Indian place opened up by us, and I
Hmm.
got like really good Indian again, and I was like, oh, I make really good white person Indian.
Oh
Like
man.
really put my grading on a curve again. I was like, oh, this is so good. And like what I make is very edible, but finally having had some like good authentic Indian, what you said made me think of it with like just the slow cooked deliciousness that you have for lunch the next day, and
Mm.
yeah.
No, I mean it's always humbling.
Yeah, cuz like I'd had it's not like I'd never had Indian. It's just it's been so long since like you taste something authentic that you're like, yeah, I'm getting this down, and then you taste it and you're like, "Oh, I'm not. I have so much to learn."
Well, that just makes you strive to do better.
Exactly. So, should we move
Let's
on?
talk about
Yeah,
yeah, let's
let's move
talk
on to
about this
scary
book.
stories. Okay, so scary
I love this book.
stories was a huge fad when we were kids. Like it came out
Hmm.
in the early '90s, and uh,
Earlier than that, I think. Hold on. 1981.
the first one came out in 1981.
Yeah, it came out in 81. It was first
84. Oh,
published
the
in 81.
third one came out in 1991 because there was a big controversy around this in the 90s, which is what made me
Hmm.
think about it. They tried to have it banned
Hmm. It's one
for
of the most frequently banned and challenged books.
yes, and unfortunately, the author Alvin Schwartz died in '92, so
Hmm. Yeah, he died really young.
he never even really got to see how that turned out.
I mean, yeah, it's a shame that these get banned so frequently. They're so perfect.
They
Like
are, and they
I-
are like even in my notes, I was like, these are really good starter children's horror.
right, because they're not the reread. This is one of the ones that I've had a lot of apprehension about going back to because I remember just being so terrified by these stories when I was a kid. And picking it up a couple of days ago, we just read the first book. The first book is about 100 pages, big print.
It's a
You,
quick
you,
100 pages. I read the whole thing in 45 minutes.
it's a 45-minute read. It's an easy read. They're not scary. The artwork, probably the thing that they're best, might be
Yes.
what they're best known for, is still terrifying this day. But the stories themselves are such perfect introductory horror to young kids, preteen, even pre-preteen. I mean, we're talking like these stories are accessible to elementary school students. That's how they're written. They're a it's a perfect encapsulation of early scares.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, the first chapter in the first book, the way that it's written is like, oh, this is how you tell a scary story to your friends. If you haven't read it in a while, first section is really it tells you how to tell a story. It tells you it's like, okay, this is the part of the story where you need to like yell, or this is the part of the story where you have to turn to one of your friends and accuse them. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written, and it's incredibly well researched. I know something that I didn't realize again as a kid, but if you flip to the back of the book, there's a full bibliography
Yeah, like there's
of where the stories come from.
it's a 100 page book with an additional 50 pages of cited sources and just like where to learn more about these stories and where these stories came from just in American folklore, and that's almost as an adult, one of the coolest parts of the book.
Yeah, because now I want to go and find all of everything that Schwartz referenced. Here's one of my very favorite things. It says at the beginning of the bibliography, books that may be of interest to young people are marked with an asterisk. So it's telling you, it's just like, oh, if you're a young kid and you enjoyed this book, here's your chance to find more things for you. And I don't remember. I don't. I mean, haven't looked, but I can't think of any other books that have something like that in it.
I also want to check out. So he did the Scary Stories trilogy, but he wrote a lot of other books, including just other horror anthologies. There's In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories, Ghosts, Ghostly Tales from Folklore. There
The
are,
Dark Dark Room, I have a copy of that on my bookshelf, waiting for a future episode.
yeah. So it's just cool that he has a lot of other non-scary story books that still kind of like get into the topic. I'd almost be interested to see
History.
how he did some of those. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has certainly rekindled my interest in the work of Alan Schwartz. Uh, there's just not that many like well-known folklorists. And now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, do I need to start following? Like, do I need to start seeking out folklorists?
A good
Um,
place to do that might be like places like Colonial Williamsburg.
hmm.
Because Colonial Williamsburg does the ghost tour at night, and you kind of go around location to location, and actors will tell you like scary stories. And a bunch of the stories in this were told to my group at Williamsburg.
I wonder if they got them from this.
Maybe because a lot of these are old like folk tales and stuff. Like specifically the story about the girl who sticks a knife into a grave
Hmm.
was one of the ones that they told. And like I think they told it differently. It was a man and it involved a bar bet and like you know, so they actually do a pretty good job of like citing where these stories came from there. So that might be a good source to find folklorists.
Hmm. Yeah, if you go look at just giving a quick look through this bibliography, a lot of the books it looks like that he did his research on came from the 40s and the 50s, and those are they're treasury of New England folklore, treasury of Southern folklore, folk songs of the South from 1925. So he was digging really deep to seek these stories out, and you'll read any of them, and they'll most of the ones in this book are going to be instantly recognizable to you as stories you've heard 1,000 times. But again, told so simply and so beautifully that they are accessible to young kids. Again, like for me, this is so imprinted onto a personality, along probably with Scooby Doo, uh, getting me into horror at a young age.
Most of these stories are between 1 and 3 pages.
Oh yeah, some of them are just like sentences.
Yeah, it's really easy to like pick it up and knock out like a story for this. Like you could microwave something and knock out a story.
Oh, easily. You could microwave something and knock out half of this book.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like that too, that you can just kind of like pick it up, knock out a few chapters and put it down again. It would be great bathroom reading.
Oh, that's a good idea. Just put a stack of these in your bathroom.
Yeah, work through them.
Get people off of their phones when they're on the can.
Exactly, like it like God intended.
But we talked about this a moment ago, but the artwork by Stephen Amell is so iconic.
Oh
So
yeah.
iconic. This artwork is terrifying. And again, it's the artwork in it is scary for an adult. No, the stories are scary for little kids, but the artwork just imprints on you. Like there are images from this book that I'll always remember. Um, the cover, this really spooky clown on the cover of the first book. Um,
There's
there,
I think it's the third book. It's Flooby Newbie. It's like almost looks like Oogie Boogie, but with long black hair. Has always like stuck out to me. Uh,
the spider in the face story that's from the second or third book. That image has always stuck with me. The hold on, I bookmarked the page and now I can't find it.
yeah, the art specifically is a big reason this book tends to get banned.
Oh, here we go. On page 30 of the first book, in the story of the haunted house, there's an image of a ghostly woman with no eyes and no nose and a rotten face, and it is terrifying. That's why it got made into a movie just a couple of years ago. This imagery is haunting and beautiful and so memorable.
I believe he might have also done some H.P. Lovecraft art that I really liked back in high school, but that artist honestly might have just been very inspired by him.
The
But
only other I was looking through the artist's bibliography, I guess, his listed works. The only other one that I was familiar with, just off the top of my head, was "The Relatives Are Coming," which is one that my mother now reads to my nieces and nephews and my daughter, which is about a big family gathering. But the the imagery is not nearly so terrifying. It's more warm and comforting, but still so recognizable as his style. It's really interesting. But I'm not aware of him having done any H.P. Lovecraft, but I haven't looked it up either, so I couldn't say.
now, in searching through his art, I have seen a lot of them. These drawings brought to life as screenshots from the movie,
Hmm.
and it looks like they pulled very little from the first book for the movie. So,
Oh yeah, the main image I'm familiar with from the ones they show on the for the movie. There's feel like it's the Scarecrow. I don't know which book that's in. I'm gonna reread I think
yeah,
both
there's
of
the
the other books before I
Scarecrow,
watch the movie.
and then there's that creepy woman that I mentioned that looks
Oh
like
yeah,
Oogie
yeah.
Boogie. It's like
Yeah,
chub.
she was big in the commercials for the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is I don't know why they would have done this. A couple of years ago they re-released these books with the art from a different artist.
Yes. Why? I mean, I think it was just to get places to stop banning them.
Must have been. It was the artist Brett Hellquist, is known for the series of Unfortunate Events books, and just looking through, like, the art that he drew was gorgeous and clearly inspired by the original work, but it's so toned down.
Yes, it's not scary. It's exactly what they're talking about in the story. Like looking at every single one of his pictures, I know which story it applies to.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily make it good, you know?
I'm not going to call it bad. I think the art is it's good art. It's
It doesn't have the impact.
no, it just doesn't have it doesn't have that same sort of gut-wrenching horror to it. It's more whimsical. Um it's a more literal interpretation. It doesn't have what this book is known for.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that they tried to do something that was going to get the book and less frequently. The reason this is a book that gets banned is because this imagery is so horrifying, and to get rid of that gets rid of really the heart and soul of the book.
One of the things I read that I liked about the controversy is that the defenders of the books, like the teachers and the librarians and all that, claim that they are aimed at middle school kids who are perfectly able to cope with this kind of thing, and that these stories and images help children deal with reality by putting faces on their fears. So,
Hmm.
like, these creepy pictures actually help to, like, make their actual childhood fears tangible. And, like, that's one of the
Hmm.
reasons I think they're so popular is because the art is so visceral that kids connect with it
Yeah.
in a way that
Absolutely.
if you were to replace it with something tamer, I don't know if the stories would have the same effect.
I don't think they can. And it's hard to know because I can't know these stories without that imagery. Like they're paired together so perfectly. And it's how I've always seen them. Like these stories and these images go hand in hand. And to divorce them, I can't know how I would feel about it in a bubble. I only know that it's like, no, they're supposed to have these. And I hate being having that kind of mentality of where we can't try something different, try something new, and see if it works better or worse. I can only see it as a pale imitation of what came before it. Um, not to not to belittle Brett Helquist, who is a absolutely brilliant artist and does good work. Certainly the series of unfortunate events books, that art is gorgeous. Here, it was a total miss for me. I'm glad I got the copies of the book that have the original artwork. Otherwise, it's just not worth talking about.
Yes. Yeah, I picked up the first and the third one at just a local yard sale last year. And I still need to get the second one, but one of the reasons I bought them is because it was the original art.
Yeah, we would love to get like these are things that I would love to have up in my house, but I wouldn't do it because I think it would be too scary for my 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think she's still a couple of years away before I'd introduce her to this. I think I'll introduce her to In a Dark, Dark Room, his other book that's written at a younger level. That's another one that like some of the stories from that one have stuck with me as well. Um,
Let's
this
talk
will be
about
fun.
stories that stuck with us.
Oh, okay, sure.
So
Which would
there's five sections to this book.
hmm.
The first one is called Ah, and it's a combination of stories where you're kind of supposed to yell out like Ah at a certain part and startle
Hmm.
people. Um, Now, in the first section, the part that the one that I've always remembered is the big toe,
Same.
and it's just always bothered me. Like, who finds a toe and eats it? It's like
Oh, it makes it's. I
there's
mean, it doesn't
random
make any.
cannibalism. So this kid's out in the field tilling the field, and he finds a giant toe sticking out of the ground. And so he rips it out of the ground and brings it home, and his parents are like, "We'll cook that up and eat it." And they do. And then in the middle of the night, something comes looking for him and is like, "Where's my toe?" And,
Oh,
that ends. Hmm?
these books start at a 10. They're starting with just random cannibalism.
Yeah, they start definitely with a big one to pull you in. But this is the one where I always like. It's also the story that makes like the least amount of sense in the book. I'm like, there's just casual cannibalism. Also, if you were gonna be a cannibal, the big toe of someone sounds like one of the least appetizing parts of the human.
Oh yeah, feet are gross.
Feet are gross. Feet are tough. Like that wouldn't even be good meat.
You'd have to
Like
cook it for so long, and there'd be
it's
so little meat.
mostly skin, thick skin and bone and nail. There's like a tiny, tiny bit of muscle. It's just, and it's just gross, and it's not worth the effort. It just wouldn't be a good meal. Why does this story exist?
I mean, and that's one of the reasons I'm so glad to have this bibliography because again, reading it as a kid, and this is definitely one of the ones that stuck with me. Like this image of the little boy like sitting over a toe that's coming up out of the ground, presumably I don't know from a corpse or something. Like there must be. Now I want to know more about the story of where this came from because it has to be from something deeper. Has to be. And again, it's a page and a half long, if that, written to be, a jump scare for kids to do to each other. But I have to believe there's some like deeper meaning that I'm just not getting. Something about like hard times or you know, people barely being able to subsist and like, oh, what option do we have but to eat this toe? It's all we have to eat, so we're gonna eat the toe. So I want to know more about where this story came from, but yeah, this is definitely one of the ones that stuck with me from childhood.
So, um, then they also kind of move forward in time, I've noticed. Like it starts more in like colonial times and then they get more and more modern. So the next chapter is he heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs, and it's kind of all like stories of encounters with spirits, is how I would
Mm-hmm.
describe it. Also, kind of more of a colonial style, and I definitely enjoyed this more than the Ah ones.
Hmm.
I appreciated the Ah ones because again, they were really good at like telling you how to tell a story, and this was the first point where we were actually like getting into an actual story.
Hmm.
And then the next one is they eat your eyes,
They eat your eyes, they eat your nose.
they eat your nose. That was one of the one at this point. Like I thought they got progressively better up to this point. Like this point was like the high point of the book for me.
Hmm.
I can't off the top of my head remember a specific tale from They Eat Your Eyes, They Eat Your Nose. I just remember really enjoying the whole chapter.
So I think the one that stuck with me again, the one that when I picked it up and reread, I was like, oh, this one I remember well. From that chapter is the girl who stood on a grave, which is about
Yes.
a group of kids who are having a party in a graveyard after night fall, and one of the girls thinks that a corpse has grabbed her by the leg. Turns out she's just been accidentally stuck to the ground with a knife, and then it scares her to death. Death. Um, yeah, one of the ones that really has stuck with me over the years. Again, with an incredibly beautiful image of the girl wailing into the night. There are some there are some stories in this that I completely forgot about, and rereading them now, I was like, what even is this? Specifically, a new horse.
Oh man, a new horse was weird.
So, a new horse. I hope everybody goes out and rereads this book before they listen to this episode of the podcast. But assuming that you've reread this or you don't care about spoilers, A New Horse is a story about two farmhands who one of them each night gets magically turned into a horse by a local witch and is rode around town. That's a sex thing, right?
I think that was just like a weird colonial witch thing. I
Witches
don't
turn men
know.
into horses and ride them. I think this has to be,
Well,
and
she
I
takes
am
him to a
going.
party and she ties him up outside and goes in and parties all night.
And then he escapes. It's something about the like getting turned into. There's a sex thing happening in that story that is that was lost on me as a child. I don't remember that one story at all because I don't think I understood it. I had to read it 3 times as an adult to try and understand what was even happening in that story. It's very strange. I think it's a sex thing.
Okay. I mean, you could look it up in the bibliography. I liked Room
I'm
for
going
One
to.
More in this one. So the story that definitely that was balls crazy. I liked every story in this chapter. I'm going through it right now.
Mm.
But the Room for One War is just like such a simple little one page Twilight Zone thing where this guy's like wakes up in the middle of the night and he sees a hearse pull into the driveway filled with people, and the driver looks up at him and he's just like, there's room for one more, and then he like drives off. And then in the morning the guy goes to take an elevator, and the elevator opens and it's all those people and the driver's just like, "There's room for one more," and he's like, "Nah, I'm good." And the elevator doors close and the elevator falls to the bottom and kills everyone.
Hmm. Foreboding.
Yeah. Um, so it's just like it has a lot of ones that I'd forgotten, but I remembered while reading them.
One of the things they do, and again along the lines of from the first chapter where it's like telling you, it's not even like just a scary story, it's telling you how to tell a scary story. In this same chapter that we're talking about, they do the Dead Man's Brains, which is the Halloween party game where you
Hmm.
pass around a bunch of different fruit and vegetables and describe them as being um parts of a dead body. That again, that's one of the things I love the most about this book. It's not just reading scary stories, it's telling you how to invoke fear. I think that's beautiful. Also, it uses the word catsup instead of ketchup, which I'm always confused by. What's the difference? No one knows.
So, uh, the fourth chapter, I don't know how to rebound from that. The fourth chapter is called Other Dangers, and it's more modern urban legends, like the man with the hook at Makeout Point,
Hmm.
who's escaped from prison, uh, just like weird stuff like that. The guy with that who keeps high beaming the woman driving, and
A
there's a
high
guy.
beaming story.
Yeah, like these are like some of our classic childhood stories. I thought the calls coming from inside the house.
Hmm. And he
Uh,
makes a point of saying that at the beginning of this chapter. It's like, oh, these are more modern. These are our modern folklore. This is our modern urban legends, just like the film Urban Legends.
which I've never seen, but I did just acquire.
It's not very good. I
That's
mean, it
what
gets
I've
out of the
heard.
like the post Scream 90s teen slasher flicks. Probably the third best known of those. Scream, Know
I
What
know
You
what you
Did
did
Last
last
Summer,
summer.
and then Urban Legends, I would say, comes in number three. Number three is well deserved there. Not good.
Okay,
Not a good movie. Still watch it.
good to know.
But there, it's a movie that employs the use of a folklorist, I believe, played by Robert England.
Oh,
I
Robert
guess
England.
I want to know more folklorists. I'm gonna walk down to my local library and insist they introduce me to their resident folklorist.
I think we have one at mine.
I'm, you know what? I would imagine in my New England town where we just had like a Paul Revere parade the other day. Not a parade. Paul Revere, guy playing Paul Revere came and rode through my town. Um, just yesterday as we record this. So we're a big colonial town. Probably have a local folklorist. If we don't have one, I'm taking that job. I'm just
Do
going to
it.
start becoming the local folklorist.
Who's gonna stop you?
Who could? It'd be impossible. There probably is like some local historian group would be like, oh no, we get to decide who's the local folklorist in this town.
And you'd be like,
And
"Great, tell me who it
I'll
is."
tell me
This
who it
is a
is. If
long
it's not me,
con.
I'm gonna fight them. I'm gonna fight my local folklorist for title of this is a strong margarita. I'm gonna go fight a bunch of local New Englanders.
Love it.
Anyway, yes, I love that section of those modern scary stories.
I did. That was
Fear of the phone, the fear of the car.
probably that was like the crescendo. That was my favorite part of the book. It built really strong to there, and then I didn't love the last chapter.
The comedy section.
Yeah, the comedy section.
It was also titled Ah, but it was supposed to be like Ah, funny.
It's like like yeah, it's all things that seem scary, but turn out it's just something silly.
So there is one story from that section that is a story that has stuck with me again since I read this as a little kid, and that's the Viper.
The Viper.
Viper, I come to vipe your windows.
And Vash them.
You come to Vosh and wipe your windows. That has stuck with me my entire life. That lives rent free in my head. I think about that probably once every couple of months. It pops back into my head.
Really?
I hadn't even realized it until I reread it, but I was just like, oh yeah, that exists in my brain forever.
I
This is the Viper. I'm coming up. I wish to wash and wipe your windows. Probably culturally insensitive now to Polish people.
The thing is, I did not like this chapter in the moment of reading it because I had
Hmm.
just come out of four chapters of but like glancing back at it today to talk to you about it, I did enjoy the stories.
Hmm.
I did. There's a one called "Wait Till Martin Comes,"
Hmm.
where basically this guy passes out in this house, and he wakes up, and every time he wakes up, there's another cat in the room bigger than the last, and they're all talking about like, should we do it now? And it's like, no, 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 we gotta wait till Martin gets here, and then like he passes out again, and he wakes up, and there's like an even bigger cat, like the size of a wolf, and they're like, all right, so we do it now, and they're like, no, we gotta wait till Martin comes. And I did enjoy that one, and I enjoyed the ghost with the bloody fingers, which is just a ghost that haunts a hotel room that just pops out of the closet and goes, bloody fingers! And it scares everyone away until this one guy says, like, alright, get yourself a band aid. What do you want from me?
Right, and that is one page. It is one page, and it's worth reading,
Yeah,
even if it's from this. That's the last story in the book. That's what they close on: is get yourself a band-aid.
just get yourself a band aid, man.
Bloody fingers. No, I am so glad we finally. I'm so glad to finally own these because I couldn't find my old copies. I'd have no idea what ended up happening to them. So to have an excuse to shell out the like $8 I think I spent on all three books, so good.
Yeah, I'm happy to have dove back into this. Do we want to do the movie next, or do we want to work through the books so we understand the context of the movie next?
Oh, I think you know what? Why don't we do the next two next week? We'll do the next two books and then we'll do the movie. We'll make it
So
a
next week
three-parter.
we're gonna compress two books into one.
Yeah, I think that seems fair.
Okay,
Because this was like getting back into it, and now we're back into it. Yeah, I think that seems like a good idea. This is a three-parter, folks. We
it's a
just added a part.
three-parter. Could have been a four-parter, but
Could have been.
it's gonna be a three-parter. All right, I just acquired the second book, which I didn't own until just now. So
Hmm. Mine are on my nightstand, so I will get myself a warm cup of milk and curl up with a good scary stories to tell in the dark sequel tonight.
awesome, cool. So are we putting this to bed till next week?
I think so.
All right. You
Join us next week, everybody.
are we cutting out adult time?
Oh, do you have anything to put in for adult time?
I finally
Um,
finished Stranger Things season 3. I'm like
how long ago did that air?
2 years ago, right after my son was born.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's about that. That makes perfect sense.
So, 4's coming out. I didn't want spoilers from the trailers. My son's finally sleeping through the night. And I watched season 3 and I really enjoyed it. I had a really bad asthma attack during the never ending story sequence in the last episode. Because
I found
I was laughing
if
so
you're
hard.
laughing too hard,
Yeah.
the season three I felt like was kind of cartoony. Like it felt like the Saturday morning cartoon version of Stranger Things.
My wife and I did discuss that. There was the first two seasons were like three linear paths, or like the first, they were the first two seasons were always like separate stories that were on a path, and you could tell when they were all eventually going to collide. And season 3 was more of like a family circus path for every single person.
Yeah,
Like there
it was
wasn't
weirdly
like
silly.
Yeah, it was not like, all right, these are going to crash, these are all going to come together soon. It was just like, these people are over here, and now these people are over here. And it was just this. I really enjoyed it, but it was very chaotic.
Yeah.
I'm excited for
It's like
season four,
the
though.
oh no, I'm gonna watch it. Rewatched The Good Place. That's what I've been doing with my adult time, like when I've had like space to myself. My wife has been watching RuPaul's Drag Race because she we have Paramount Plus now, so she's been catching up on like years worth of Drag Race. And while she's been doing that, I rewatched uh The Good Place. What a cathartic show. Everybody should watch The Good Place and just have feelings.
I
Would
never
be my
finished
recommendation.
the last season, last two seasons.
I think it's an easy watch.
I watched
As
like the
soon as they
first
put it
three
on it.
seasons. I know that much. Really
Oh,
enjoyed it.
finish it up. It's so
Um,
easy to watch.
Again, I think my son was born, and I just kind of fell off of it.
Lived your life.
Yeah.
You lived that baby life.
But yeah, I really do want to finish it. But all right, yeah. Well, speaking of finishing it, where can they find us, Sam?
You can find us online. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at RT Spirits Pod bleh, or at RT Spirits Pod on your social media platforms. Let us know if you have anything you think we should talk about.
Okay.
All
Thanks for
right.
joining us. I'm Steve.
I'm Sam. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.